Chapter 1. The house on Sycamore Lane. Gavin Rhodes gripped the worn leather steering wheel of his old Jeep. She turned onto Sycamore Lane, the tires crunching softly over gravel. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees lining the road, dappling his windshield in golden patches. Everything about Hazel Creek looked like a postcard: quaint houses with white fences, kids on bikes, and flower beds bursting with color. It felt surreal, too quiet, too still. He pulled up in front of the small craftsman cottage that once belonged to his Aunt Margaret. A patch of ivy had begun to creep up one side of the faded blue siding, and a rusted wind chime clinked lazily near the front porch. The house hadn't changed since he visited as a boy, back when summers meant lemonade and tire swings instead of sandstorms and triage tents. Cutting the engine, Gavin sat for a moment, the silence pressing in. No radio chatter, no helicopter blades, just birdsong and distant laughter, an unfamiliar soundtrack to a man who had spent years tuning out explosions and gunfire. As he stepped out, a sharp whistle pierced the air, followed by a bark. A golden retriever bounded into the yard next door, followed by a boy in a superhero cape yelling, "Max, come back here." The dog skidded to a halt near Gavin's boots, tail wagging furiously. Gavin froze, unsure what to do. The dog, unconcerned with his discomfort, sat down and offered a slobbery grin. "Sorry about that," the boy called, grabbing the dog's collar and tugging gently. "He likes new people, or just people, or squirrels." Before Gavin could respond, a woman appeared at the edge of the neighboring yard, wiping her hands on a towel. Her dark hair was tied in a messy bun, and she wore a faded Hazel Creek elementary t-shirt that looked like it had survived a paint war. She was laughing, real, full-bodied laughter that wrapped around the moment like sunlight. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said brightly. "I'm Emily, and that rascal is Max. This little tornado is Charlie, my youngest." Gavin gave a nod, unsure how to respond to such warmth. "Gavin Rhodes, just moved in." "Well, Gavin Rhodes, you picked the best street in town. Let us know if you need sugar, or duct tape, or sanity, though we're a bit short on that last one over here." Charlie waved enthusiastically. "Bye, Mr. Gavin," he called as Emily herded him and the dog back toward their porch, where the screen door slammed shut behind them. Gavin watched them disappear inside, the echo of their chaos oddly comforting. He turned back to the house, the 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭 in his palm. This was supposed to be a place to disappear, to heal, to be left alone, but already, Hazel Creek didn't feel like a place that let people stay strangers for long. Chapter 2. A cracked windshield, and a glimpse of chaos. Sound was sharp and sudden crack, followed by the unmistakable thud of something solid hitting glass. Gavin flinched as he looked up from the toolbox in the back of his Jeep, his heart pounding with the kind of instinctual tension he hadn't shaken, even here in Hazel Creek. He turned toward the source, just in time to see a baseball rolling to a stop near his front tire. A jagged line split the corner of his windshield like a spider web. "Charlie Carter." A voice rang out from the next yard, exasperated and breathless. A moment later, Emily Carter came rushing out of her front door, barefoot on the lawn, her ponytail half falling out and her cheeks flushed. "I am so sorry," she said as she reached the edge of his driveway, dragging her little brother, now sheepish and wide-eyed, behind her. "He was supposed to be playing in the backyard, but of course, the one time I'm not watching like a hawk." Gavin looked from her to the boy, whose lower lip trembled as he clutched a worn baseball glove to his chest. "I didn't mean to," Charlie mumbled. "I was trying to throw a curveball." Gavin crouched down and picked up the ball, turning it over in his palm. "Well, that was a pretty decent curve. Just work on your aim." Charlie blinked up at him. "You're not mad?" "I've seen worse," Gavin said, offering a small, rare smile. "A cracked windshield's nothing." Emily let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. "Still, I want to pay for it. Or at least make it right. Maybe dinner. Spaghetti. It's what we do when we screw up, bribe people with carbs." Gavin raised an eyebrow. Is that an official Hazel Creek tradition? Only on Sycamore Lane, she said with a grin, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I promise there's laughter, chaos, and probably someone spilling milk before dessert, but the sauce is homemade. He hesitated. For a moment, the familiar instinct to politely decline rose in his throat. But the earnest look in Charlie's eyes, and Emily's confident awkwardness, chipped away at his resistance. All right, he said finally. Dinner sounds good. Great. Tomorrow at 6. Don't wear anything you care about too much. With that, she turned back toward her house, guiding Charlie along, while muttering something about making garlic bread from scratch this time. Gavin watched them go, the corner of his mouth still lifted in amusement. The crack in the windshield didn't bother him anymore. Not when it had come with an unexpected invitation into a life louder, messier, and warmer than his own had been in years. Chapter 3. Dinner 4-5+1. The scent of garlic and tomatoes hit Gavin the moment he stepped onto the Carter porch, warm and rich, mingling with the faint sound of giggles and clattering dishes inside. He hesitated for a beat before knocking. It had been a long time since he'd entered someone's home for dinner, without it being a formal obligation or a family holiday filled with tension. This felt different, unfamiliar in a way that tugged at something he hadn't used in years. Hope. The door flew open before he could knock again. You're on time. Emily beamed, flour on her cheek and a towel slung over one shoulder like a battle sash. You're already one step ahead of my siblings. Gavin stepped inside and was immediately surrounded by controlled chaos. The living room was cozy and lived in, with soft blankets draped over the couch, colorful crayon drawings taped proudly to the walls, and a small mountain of mismatched shoes piled by the door. Guys, Emily called, our guest is here. Be nice. A blur of activity descended upon him. I'm Lily, said a serious-looking girl with oversized glasses, extending a hand like a miniature adult. I'm the middle child and the most organized. I color-coded the placemats. I'm Noah, shouted the eldest, around 12, who offered Gavin a fist bump and a grin. Are you really a doctor? Like, with the army? Gavin nodded, adjusting quickly to the whirlwind of introductions. They ushered him to the table, where 5 places had been set each with a name card in glitter marker. His read Dr. G, with a heart dotting the G. He couldn't help the laugh that bubbled up. We don't usually have guests, Emily said as she brought over a massive bowl of spaghetti. And when we do, we tend to overwhelm them. Fair warning. I've faced worse, Gavin said, deadpan, though I don't think I've ever had to dodge flying peas in a mess hall. That was one time. Charlie yelled defensively from his booster seat. Dinner unfolded in a storm of chatter, laughter, and accidental spills. Lily launched into a monologue about her science project involving gummy worms. Noah bragged about his role in the school play, and Charlie insisted on performing a magic trick with his napkin that failed spectacularly. Emily floated around the table like a practice general, refilling glasses, passing bread, and laughing at jokes she'd clearly heard a dozen times before, and Gavin, without even realizing it, relaxed. He laughed more in that hour than he had in months. When Charlie accidentally knocked over his juice, Gavin caught the glass before it hit the floor, and instead of flinching at the sound, he just smiled as the kids ran off to start a post-dinner movie in the next room. Emily and Gavin remained at the table, the soft clink of utensils the only sound between them for a moment. They like you, she said, resting her chin in her palm. Gavin looked at her, truly looked. There was a tiredness in her eyes, yes, but also something fierce and beautiful. She was a woman holding her little world together with thread and laughter and grit. I like them too, he said quietly. Emily smiled, then rose to start clearing dishes. Next time, you're bringing dessert. There was going to be a next time. And for the first time in a long while, Gavin found he didn't dread the idea at all. Chapter 4. Nightmares and nursery rhymes scream ripped Gavin from sleep. He jolted upright in bed, chest heaving, drenched in sweat. His heart pounded against his ribs like a warning bell, and for a few disoriented seconds, he wasn't in Hazel Creek anymore. He was back in the thick heat of the desert, the scent of smoke and blood in his nostrils, adrenaline flooding every vein. He rubbed his face with trembling hands, grounding himself in the cool darkness of the room. No gunfire, no radio static, just crickets chirping through the open window and the soft hum of the ceiling fan above. Gavin swung his legs over the side of the bed and sat on the edge, elbows on his knees. His breaths were short and uneven, as if his lungs couldn't decide whether to fight or freeze. And then, like a bomb over a burn, came a sound from the house next door, a voice. Soft, melodic, reading aloud. He closed his eyes and listened. And the very hungry caterpillar ate through one slice of salami, one lollipop, one slice of cherry pie. Emily. Her voice filtered through the open window, low and rhythmic, like a lullaby for the soul. She was reading to her siblings, maybe to Charlie, maybe to all three of them. He imagined her curled up on a couch, blanket pulled over the little ones, a storybook open in her lap. He could hear the occasional giggle and Charlie's tiny interjections, correcting her. She skipped a word. He leaned toward the window, resting his head against the frame. The sound steadied him in a way nothing else had for months. It reminded him that he wasn't on a battlefield anymore. He was here, in Hazel Creek, where children still giggled at bedtime stories and neighbors left porch lights on. Emily's voice trailed off gently, followed by a hushed good night, you goofballs, and the creak of a closing door. Silence settled again, but it was a different kind of silence, now not the choking void that came after nightmares, but something gentler, safer. Gavin lay back down slowly, the sheets cool against his skin. As his breathing calmed, he found himself imagining what it might feel like to have a voice like that close by on purpose, someone to anchor him when the memories pulled to hard dot. And as he drifted into a quieter sleep, one thought lingered, soft and stubborn. He didn't feel alone anymore. Chapter 5. A picnic by Pine Creek's Saturday in Hazel Creek came wrapped in sunshine and the hum of anticipation. Gavin had only planned to stop by the market for coffee and the loaf of bread, but fate, or more accurately, a sugar-fueled Charlie Carter had other plans. Dr. Gavin. Charlie shouted across the crowded town square, nearly tripping over his own feet as he tugged on his sister Lily's hand. You have to come to the picnic. Before Gavin could offer a polite excuse, Emily appeared beside them, balancing a basket of homemade muffins and a blanket slung over one shoulder. Her hair was in a loose braid, freckles dotting her nose from the morning sun, and her smile was, as always, disarming. We could use an extra pair of hands, she said with a hopeful glint in her eye. Unless you have pressing doctor stuff to do. He glanced at his grocery bag, then back at her. I suppose I could spare a couple hours for muffins and chaos. They walked the short trail to Pine Creek together, the kids skipping ahead, leaving Emily and Gavin trailing behind. The path curved beneath tall oaks and followed the gentle gurgle of the creek, wildflowers blooming in the underbrush. When they reached the open field by the water, the place was already dotted with checkered blankets and the smell of grilled corn and lemonade. Gavin helped lay out their picnic, while Emily unpacked sandwiches and fruit skewers. Charlie, Lily, and Noah darted off to join a game of tag with the other kids, their laughter echoing under the trees. Hazel Creek's one of those towns that takes any excuse to turn a Saturday into a holiday, Emily said, sitting beside him on the blanket. We like to pretend life's slower here. Gavin watched the sunlight dance on the creek surface, the breeze rustling the leaves. It is slower, in the best way. They sat in a comfortable quiet for a moment, watching the children play. Emily passed him a lemonade, their fingers brushing for a second too long. You're good with them, she said, her voice softer now. You don't say much, but they look at you like you're some kind of superhero. He smiled faintly, though the compliment knotted something deep in his chest. I'm not even close. Emily didn't push. Instead, she leaned back on her elbows and looked up at the sky. Maybe not the Cape kind, but the steady kind. The kind that shows up. That silence stretched again. But this time it felt charged, gentle, but meaningful. Around them, the world buzzed with life, but the blanket they sat on felt like its own little island. Later, after a round of tug-of-war left Charlie mud-streaked and victorious, Gavin helped clean up, while the kids fed crumbs to the ducks. As he folded the blanket, Emily stopped beside him, a strand of hair caught on her cheek. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly. "It meant a lot to them, and to me." He looked at her then, really looked. And for the first time in a long while, Gavin felt the familiar ache of something returning, connection, belonging. "The tiniest seed of hope, anytime," he said, and meant it. Chapter 6, flashbacks and first real talk. School auditorium buzzed with chatter as families settled in for Hazel Creek Elementary's annual talent showcase. Gavin found a spot near the back, still not entirely sure how he'd let the Carter kids talk him into coming. Charlie had promised to perform a magic trick, Lily was singing, and Noah, apparently, had written a comedy sketch involving a cardboard pizza and a stuffed raccoon. Gavin braced himself. Emily spotted him from backstage and waved, half in greeting, half in warning. She wore a headset and a frazzled expression that said she'd been wrangling children and microphones for hours. Still, when she saw him sitting there, her face softened into something warm and genuine. The lights dimmed, and the show began. Gavin found himself smiling through the entire spectacle, off-key songs, mismatched dance steps, and all. When Lily finished her rendition of Rainbow Connection and took a dramatic bow, she beamed when she saw him clapping. After the show, the hallway outside the auditorium filled with families. Gavin found himself waiting by a bulletin board crowded with macaroni art and construction paper collages. He was just about to leave when he heard a small voice behind him. "Are you really a doctor from the army?" A boy of about 7 asked, his eyes wide and curious. Gavin turned slowly, nodding. "I was. Did you fix people who got hurt in the war?" Gavin opened his mouth, then paused. "How do you explain triage tents and field dressings, the smell of cauterized wounds, the weight of not being able to save them all?" "I tried," he said simply. The boy nodded like that answer was enough, then ran off to join his parents. Gavin stood there for a moment longer, a flicker of something old and heavy rising in his chest. "You okay?" Emily's voice pulled him back. She'd changed out of her headset and looked softer now, more herself. "Yeah," he said. Not entirely convincingly, they stepped outside into the cool evening, the street lamps casting golden pools of light on the pavement. The kids were still inside, helping clean up backstage. Emily glanced over at him. "You looked far away for a minute." Gavin hesitated, then surprised even himself when he spoke. "That kid asked if I fix people. I didn't know what to say, some I did. Some I didn't." Emily's steps slowed, her brow furrowing. "That's not something you just leave behind, is it?" He shook his head. "No, and the ones I couldn't save, they visit me sometimes, in dreams. Or in moments like that, out of nowhere. I can't always stop it." They stopped walking, standing beneath a canopy of leaves, swaying gently in the breeze. Emily turned to face him. "You don't have to pretend around me, Gavin. I'm not here to fix you, but I'll sit with you through it. If you want." Something inside him shifted, subtle but seismic. No one had said that to him in a long time, maybe ever. He looked at her then, his voice low. "I think I do want that." She didn't speak, just nodded. And in that quiet space between them, something deep and unspoken past a first crack in the wall he'd built, a beginning of trust. Gavin had come to Hazel Creek to disappear, but standing next to Emily, under the soft glow of the street lamp, he realized he might have just started to come back to life. Chapter 7, Rain, a flat tire, and a ride home. Rain came without warning. One moment the California sky was clear and golden, and the next it broke open with a heavy downpour that soaked the sidewalks and turned Sycamore Lane into a blur of glistening, pavement and dancing droplets. Gavin had just finished picking up groceries when he spotted the familiar, sputtering blue sedan parked along the shoulder near the bend in the road. Hazard lights blinked weakly through the curtain of rain. He pulled up beside it and immediately recognized Emily, soaked to the bone, frowning at a tire that had given up on life. She looked up, rain streaming down her cheeks like tears, and gave him a sheepish smile. "Hey, Doc." He rolled down the window. "Need a rescue?" She sighed. "Only if it comes with heat and a towel." Minutes later, Emily sat in the passenger seat of his Jeep, her wet clothes dripping onto a towel Gavin had tossed her. She shivered slightly, brushing damp hair out of her face, and gave a dramatic sigh of defeat. "I was going to pick up cupcakes for Lily's science club. Guess they're getting soggy granola bars instead." Gavin chuckled, his eyes flicking to her out of the corner of his eye. "You okay?" "Just wet, humiliated, and mildly annoyed at my tire's betrayal. Otherwise, totally fine." He glanced at her hands faintly trembling from the cold and reached over to adjust the heater. Silence settled for a moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when two people are content just existing beside each other. "You didn't have to stop," she said softly, looking out the window as the rain streaked the glass. "I mean, I'm glad you did, but you didn't have to." "I wanted to," Gavin replied, his voice low. "You've saved me in your own way more than once, Emily." She turned her head slowly, her expression unreadable. "You mean the spaghetti?" "No," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "I mean the stories, the laughter, the way your house glows like a safe place. Even the chaos, especially the chaos." Emily swallowed, visibly caught off guard. Her gaze softened, and for a second, neither of them spoke. The rain tapped gently on the roof, the heater hummed, and their eyes held just a second too long. "I'm not always a safe place," she whispered. "I'm tired, Gavin. I mess up. I worry too much. I don't know what I'm doing half the time." "Neither do I," he said simply. "But that doesn't mean we can't be something good, even if it's messy." A beat passed. Then she exhaled a quiet laugh, wiping her forehead with the towel. "You always talk like that," she teased, all intense and brooding. He smirked. "Only when it's raining." As he pulled into her driveway, Emily paused before getting out. She turned back to him, hesitated, then leaned in and kissed his cheek brief, barely there, and yet it left him frozen in place. "Thanks for the rescue," she murmured. And then she was gone, dashing up her porch steps under the rain, leaving Gavin alone in the Jeep, heart pounding like he'd just been hit by lightning. Chapter 8. The Carter family 𝐾𝐨𝐬 hadn't meant to stay this long. What started as a quick drop-off Charlie's forgotten lunchbox had turned into an entire Saturday spent inside the Carter home, caught in a whirlwind of markers, cereal spills, and back-to-back reruns of a cartoon featuring talking llamas. Somehow, he wasn't complaining. He sat at the kitchen table, a pink scrunchie dangling from his wrist thanks to Lily, who was in the midst of conducting a sibling spa day. Emily had disappeared upstairs to wrangle laundry, leaving Gavin at the mercy of her three irrepressible siblings. Noah stood nearby, enthusiastically explaining the rules of a board game that had way too many pieces. "So if you land on the purple square, you have to draw a card, and then do a dance, unless it's a Tuesday. Got it?" "I'm a fast learner," Gavin said dryly. "Not at braiding," Lily added, scrutinizing the crooked attempt he'd made on her doll's hair. "But it's okay. You're good at knots. You could totally work in a hair salon for pirates." Gavin chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." Charlie darted through the room in superhero pajamas, a wooden spoon in one hand and a cape made from an old towel fluttering behind him. "Dr. Gavin, come quick. The dragon is burning the living room." "I'll be right there, Captain Chaos," Gavin called, rising with a dramatic groan. Emily reappeared just as he turned the corner. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, holding a basket of mismatched socks and staring at the scene in her living room, blankets draped over chairs, glitter glue on the rug, and a grown man gently tucking a stuffed animal into a plastic toy ambulance. Her expression softened into something unreadable. Maybe surprise. Maybe awe. "You know," she said quietly as he re-entered the kitchen. "You're really good with them." Gavin gave a half shrug. "It's easier than I thought it'd be. I think they've recruited me. They don't let just anyone in," she said, folding socks. "It's a very exclusive club." He watched her for a moment. The way she worked quietly, gently, balancing so much with no visible sign of strain, except the slight curve in her shoulders. She was always moving, always giving. "Do you ever get tired?" he asked softly. Emily glanced up, a smile tugging at her lips. "All the time. But then someone shouts that the dragon is in the living room, and I forget for a little while." Gavin leaned back in his chair, a warmth blooming quietly in his chest. He hadn't meant to stay the whole afternoon, but now he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. This messy, noisy, colourful world felt more real than anything he'd known in years, and somewhere between glue disasters and superhero games, he stopped feeling like a guest. He started to feel like part of something. Chapter 9. The letter from overseas envelope sat unopened on Gavin's kitchen counter. Its beige paper, already worn at the corners from his thumb pressing along the edge over and over again. It had come that morning, forwarded from an old military base. The return address smudged, but unmistakable. Corporal Jason Lee, Afghanistan. A name Gavin hadn't spoken aloud in 2 years. A friend he hadn't heard from since the night everything went sideways. He stared at it 4 hours before finally sitting down to read. The letter was short. "Doc, I finally had the guts to write. I remember everything you did that night. You saved my leg, my life, and half the team. You blame yourself, I know you do, but none of us ever did. You were the only calm in hell. I'm walking again. Not great, but enough. I've got a wife now. A baby girl on the way. I thought you should know. You did more good than you realize. You always did, Jason." Gavin set the letter down, his hands trembling. He should have felt relief, gratitude, closure, maybe. But instead, a rush of emotion he couldn't name swelled in his chest. Guilt still lingered, a shadow that refused to leave. But now it was tangled with something else. Grief, maybe. Or the terrifying ache of being seen and forgiven. By the time Emily knocked on his door that evening, the letter still lay where he'd left it. "Hey," she greeted, holding a dish of baked ziti and a tired smile. "I made enough to feed an army. Figured I'd try feeding a doctor instead." He managed a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You okay?" she asked, stepping inside. "You look quiet, even for you." He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Instead, he handed her the letter. Emily read it slowly, her eyes scanning each line with quiet care. When she was done, she didn't say anything. She didn't rush to offer comfort or try to fix the silence. She just moved closer, set the dish on the counter, and wrapped her arms around him. At first, Gavin stood still, his body stiff with emotion. But then something inside him cracked, and he sank into her warmth, his arms wrapped around her, holding on like he was afraid she'd vanish. "I don't know how to carry it all," he whispered. "You don't have to carry it alone," she said. They stood like that in the kitchen, no noise, but the low hum of the fridge and the steady rhythm of 2 hearts, relearning how to beat in the presence of something safe. Later, Gavin didn't touch the ziti, but he sat beside Emily on the couch, the letter folded in his pocket, her hand in his. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like running from the past. He just wanted to stay. Chapter 10. A fall festival and a fading smile. Hazel Creek's fall festival arrived like clockwork, painting the town in amber and gold. Hay bales lined the sidewalks, caramel apples dripped with sticky sweetness, and every front porch seemed to glow with pumpkins and handmade scarecrows. It was the kind of small-town charm Gavin had only seen in movies until now. Emily had roped him into volunteering at the dunk tank. "The kids love seeing their teachers get soaked," she'd grinned. "And apparently, you have a fan club." She wasn't wrong. Half the students in town had lined up for a chance to dunk Dr. G as he sat dripping in the tank. Gavin caught glimpses of Emily, flitting between booths, like sunlight organizing the pie contest, helping Charlie pick a prize, and laughing with parents. She wore a cozy maroon sweater and a scarf loosely tied around her neck, her cheeks flushed with the cool breeze. She looked happy, but as the sun began to set, that glow dimmed. Gavin noticed the change when she came to sit beside him at the cider booth. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her laugh was softer, more forced. He followed her gaze across the festival grounds to where a tall, clean-cut man in khakis was chatting animatedly with a group of teachers. "Friend of yours?" he asked casually, though the weight in his chest said otherwise. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "That's Greg. He used to teach at the high school. He's around a lot lately." Gavin watched the man laugh, watched Emily's fingers tighten around her cup. "He seems like someone your family would like," Gavin said, trying to keep his voice even. Emily turned to him then, her eyes searching his face. "They do, but I don't." The words hung there, unspoken feelings brushing the edges of everything. Gavin wanted to reach for her hand, to close the distance that had been growing between them since the letter from Jason. But something held him back. The crowd grew thicker as night fell, lights twinkling overhead like lazy fireflies. A band began to play near the gazebo, and couples drifted toward the music. Gavin and Emily stood close, but not close enough. "I should get the kids home," she said, after a long silence, her voice gentle but distant. He nodded. "Yeah, sure." As she walked away, Charlie riding on her hip and Lily dragging a stuffed animal behind her, Gavin felt a deep chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The night was beautiful, the town was glowing, but between them, something had dimmed, and as the laughter and music continued around him, Gavin realized he missed her even though she hadn't left completely. Not yet. Chapter 11. Breaking point. Rain returned in the early hours of Sunday morning, gentle at first, then steady, soaking the sleepy town in grey. Gavin sat alone in his living room, the letter from Jason folded neatly on the coffee table. It had been days since the fall festival, days since he and Emily had spoken beyond polite small talk. The space between them had stretched into silence, and still, he hadn't crossed it. He told himself it was to protect her from the darker corners of his mind, from the weight he hadn't figured out how to shed. But the truth gnawed at him. He was afraid of letting her see everything, afraid she already had. The knock came just after 9. 3 sharp taps, then nothing. He opened the door to find Emily standing on the porch in a yellow raincoat, soaked despite the umbrella dangling from her wrist. Her eyes met his, unreadable but steady. "Can we talk?" He stepped aside. Inside, she didn't sit. She paced, arms crossed, jaw tight. Gavin remained near the fireplace, watching her the way he might watch a storm inch closer. "You've been pulling away," she said finally. "Since the letter." He didn't deny it. "I've been trying to give you space, Gavin. I know grief doesn't follow a schedule. I know healing isn't linear. But I also know when someone is shutting me out." Gavin exhaled slowly, the words building like pressure behind his ribs. "I thought it would be easier," he said quietly, "to push you away before I mess everything up." Emily turned sharply toward him, eyes blazing. "You think this is easier? Watching you retreat, watching the kids ask where you are, wondering if I did something wrong." "You didn't," he said, voice raw. "This is me. It's always been me. I've carried so many ghosts, Emily. Men I couldn't save, families I had to call. I still hear their voices. I still see their faces. I don't know how to be around someone good without feeling like I'll ruin them." Tears prickled in Emily's eyes, but she didn't look away. "You don't ruin things, Gavin," she said. "You carry them. You hold them until your shoulders break, because you don't know how to let anyone else in." He looked at her then, and for the first time, the mask cracked completely. His voice trembled. "I don't know how to be loved without wondering when it's going to leave." Emily crossed the room and took his hand, gently, deliberately. "Then let me stay," she whispered. "Even when it's hard, especially then." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of breath, of unspoken forgiveness, of grief shared instead of hidden. She reached up and touched his face. and Gavin leaned into her palm like a drowning man, finally surfacing. "You're not broken," she said softly. "You're just hurting, and I'm not afraid of your hurt." Gavin closed his eyes. And for the first time in a long time, he let someone hold the weight with him. Chapter 12. Letters from little hand envelopes sat on Gavin's porch, wedged beneath a chipped ceramic mug. His name was scrawled across the front in colourful marker, each letter a different size and shape. No return address, just a heart sticker sealed on the back. He almost stepped over it on his way to work, still feeling raw from the conversation with Emily a few nights before. But something made him pause. He picked it up, peeled the sticker carefully, and unfolded the paper inside. There were 3 sheets each, one a masterpiece of crooked handwriting, crayon doodles, and wide-open hearts. The first was from Charlie. "Dear Dr. Gavin, I miss you. Max misses you too. Mom doesn't say it, but I think she misses you the most. Come back soon. P.S. I saved you a gummy bear green." A jelly bean was taped to the corner in case the gummy bear didn't survive. The second was from Lily. "We're learning about constellations in school. You'd like it. Stars look like a mess until someone connects the dots. Like you and us. Please come over. I'll teach you the Big Dipper and braid your hair better this time." The last was from Noah. His handwriting was steadier, his words more careful. "You don't have to talk if you're not ready, but we miss your quiet. It made our house feel safe. That's all. Come when you can." Gavin sat on the porch step, the letters trembling slightly in his hands. He hadn't realized how deeply he'd burrowed into their lives, how fully they'd accepted him. He'd been so afraid of hurting them, of leaving shadows where there should be light, that he hadn't seen how much light they'd already brought into his life. That afternoon, instead of retreating into the comfort of silence, he showed up. Not at the front door, not with flowers or apologies, but at the schoolyard gate. Just as the final bell rang. Charlie was the first to spot him. He dropped his backpack mid-run and barreled into Gavin with all the force his tiny frame could muster. "You came back," he shouted, clinging to his leg. Lily followed, clutching her notebook. "You missed Spirit Week, but we'll forgive you if you play kickball on Saturday." Noah simply nodded, but his smile said everything Gavin needed to hear. And then there was Emily standing a few steps behind, a stack of papers in her hands and hope in her eyes. She didn't rush toward him, didn't say anything at all at first. She just watched, like she wasn't sure if he was real. "I got some mail this morning," Gavin said softly when their eyes met. "Changed my whole day." Emily's lips curved. "They've been asking every morning if you'd come." "I almost didn't," he admitted. "But those letters were written by little hands with very big hearts," she finished, stepping closer. Gavin nodded. "And they reminded me what it feels like to be part of something." She reached out, her fingers brushing his. "Then maybe it's time to stop running." "Yeah," he said, lacing his fingers with hers. "Maybe it is." Chapter 13. The big snow, and the big tall 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 Creek hadn't seen snow like this in years. Thick flakes blanketed the town in silence, tucking rooftops and treetops into white, muffled stillness. School had closed early. Roads were slick. Power flickered in and out as Emily hurried the kids through dinner by candlelight. Snow day. Charlie cheered from the living room fort, made of blankets and overturned chairs. "Best day ever," Emily smiled, but her gaze kept drifting to the front window. Gavin hadn't answered her last text. The power lines down Sycamore Lane were out. Her stomach knotted with worrying. And then, just as she lit a second candle, headlights cut through the storm. A few minutes later, Gavin stood dripping in her entryway, his dark coat dusted with snow, hair damp, boots leaving small puddles on the welcome mat. "You walked here?" she asked, incredulous. "The Jeep slid off the road near Millstone Hill," he said with a shrug. "I figured you were probably making grilled cheese with candles and could use some backup." Emily shook her head, torn between exasperation and a sudden, swelling warmth in her chest. "You're impossible, persistent," he corrected, stepping inside. By nightfall, the house was lit with flickering candles, the fireplace crackling gently as the snowstorm raged on outside. The kids had fallen asleep in a pile on the couch, exhausted from snowball fights and cocoa. Emily and Gavin sat near the fire, wrapped in shared silence. He watched the flames dance for a while before speaking. "Do you ever think about how strange this is?" "Yes," she tilted her head. "Strange. I was supposed to disappear into this town. Hide. Heal. Maybe. I didn't expect to find you." "All them." Emily's voice was quiet. "And do you regret it?" "No," he said immediately. "I regret waiting so long to stop pushing you away." She looked over at him, her face glowing in the firelight. "Why did you?" Gavin stared at his hands, then at her. "Because I didn't trust myself not to break something that mattered. I thought I'd mess it up. That I'd drag my past into this house and poison the good here." Emily reached for his hand, curling her fingers around his. "You didn't. You showed up, Gavin. Even when it was hard." He turned to her fully now, voice low and hoarse. "I love them, those kids. They remind me what it's like to laugh, to show up. And I love you, Emily. I have for a while." Her breath caught. "You don't have to say it back," he added quickly. "I just needed you to know." She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "I do. I love you too. I think I knew it the day you tried to braid Lily's doll's hair." They both laughed softly, the kind of laugh that heals a crack instead of hiding it. Snow fell quietly beyond the windows as they leaned into each other, their foreheads touching, hearts thawing after years of winter. They didn't need to promise forever that night. Just now, just here, just this warmth, honesty, and the comfort of being seen and loved anyway. Chapter 14. A family by choice. Spring crept into Hazel Creek slowly, with blossoms unfurling along the fences and morning sunlight that lingered just a little longer each day. The snow had melted into memory, leaving behind muddy footprints, budding, hope and something new blooming between Gavin and the Carters. He spent more time at their house now than his own. Pancake breakfasts, science fair prep, game nights that ended in fits of laughter. His mug had a designated spot in the cupboard. His coat hung on the back of the kitchen chair. It wasn't official, but it felt like home. So when the call came, a prestigious trauma position at a major hospital in San Francisco, he stared at his phone for a long time, thumb hovering over the accept button. It was the kind of offer that once would have lit something in him. Prestige, purpose, escape. But now, it felt more like a test. A tug-of-war between the man he was rebuilding and the life he never saw coming. He didn't say anything at first, but the weight of the decision hung in the air. That Friday, Hazel Creek Elementary hosted its spring assembly. Parents and teachers filled the folding chairs, buzzing with chatter. Gavin slipped into the back row, unnoticed until Charlie spotted him from the stage and beamed, whispering frantically to Lily. When Emily stepped up to the microphone to open the program, she spotted him, too. Their eyes met, and just like that, his heart settled. After the kids' performances, Principal Rowley surprised everyone by announcing the Helping Hands Award, given to a community member who had gone above and beyond for local families. "To someone who showed up when we needed them," Rowley said, "who reminded us that family doesn't have to be by blood, it can be chosen." He turned toward the audience. Dr. Gavin Rhodes. The gym erupted into applause. Gavin froze, stunned. Emily grinned through teary eyes, the kids cheering like he'd won an Olympic medal. He walked to the front, still dazed, and knelt beside Charlie, who hugged him without hesitation. "See," the boy whispered proudly, "you're one of us now." That night, Gavin found Emily alone on the back porch, her cardigan wrapped tightly around her. "I turned the job down," he said simply. Her breath hitched, but she didn't look surprised. "Just quiet, listening. I thought I was supposed to run toward the next thing," he continued, "to matter again, but it turns out I already do. Right here." She looked up at him, her voice low and thick with emotion. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Hazel Creek fixed something I didn't know was broken. And you're the reason I found my way back." Emily stepped into his arms then, resting her head against his chest. They didn't need to define what they were. They were them, flawed, healing, and real, a family, by choice. And by love. Chapter 15. Hazel Creek's heartbeat morning. Sun stretched over Hazel Creek like a golden promise, warming the wildflower fields just beyond the edge of town. Gavin walked hand in hand with Emily down the familiar dirt path near Pine Creek, their boots pressing soft impressions into the earth behind them. The Carter kids ran ahead, chasing butterflies and collecting smooth stones, their laughter echoing between the trees. It had been nearly a year since Gavin first arrived on Sycamore Lane with more baggage than boxes, expecting nothing more than silence and solitude. But Hazel Creek had other plans, and so did Emily. Now, his days were filled with chalk drawings on driveways, burnt pancakes on Saturdays, bedtime stories told by flashlight, and arms that wrapped around him at night without fear. "I never imagined it like this," he said quietly, as they paused beneath the willow tree that had shaded their first real moment together. Emily smiled, brushing her fingers along the tall grass. "Like what, love?" he said, "not with fireworks or fanfare, but steady, honest, like something you build instead of fall into." She turned to him fully then, eyes bright and searching. "We built this, Gavin, all of us, together." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch, not a ring box, not yet, but something that made Emily's breath catch nonetheless. Inside was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a heart, carved with a tiny constellation on one side. "The Big Dipper," she whispered, touched. "Lily's favorite, and mine," he said, "because it reminded me that even when everything looks like a mess, sometimes all you need is someone to help you connect the dots." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "Are you?" he nodded. "I'm not asking you to marry me, not today. I'm asking for something bigger. I'm asking for every school play, every scraped knee, every quiet moment when the world feels too loud. I want this us, all of it." Emily stepped closer, her hands resting over his heart. "We already chose each other, Gavin. This just makes it official." In the distance, the kids called out for them to hurry. Charlie had found a frog. Noah was insisting it needed a proper name. Lily shouted that it should be something epic. Gavin and Emily laughed, fingers intertwined, as they walked toward their beautifully messy life. And as the warm wind rustled the wildflowers around them, Hazel Creek exhaled. It had always been a place of healing, but now it was also home.